This is Eve. Eve is a robot. Eve has 2 legs and 4 muscles. Let's meet Eve. At the start of this project, we were told to create a robot using a construction program provided by SODAPLAY.com that moves gracefully, or not so gracefully, from the left side of the screen to the right and back. Now, we were told we were going to be racing and battling these robots at the end of this project as well. I knew I had to have 2 distinct robots at the end, one that was good for walking and one that was good for fighting. So, that's exactly what I did. Eve is my walker, and she certainly looked different when I began this project. As soon as I started building her, I realized after looking around at what other people in the class were doing, I wanted to do something completely different. And that's exactly what I did. This was Eve.01. It was a mess of muscles, springs, and points that served little to no purpose. And it's not even touching the ground. She was flying on her own muscle power. I originally wanted a robot that flew instead of walked. Needless to say, this model was scrapped, both because it didn't meet the project guidelines and that it didn't work. I started over. Eve.02 was a blank slate which I quickly filled with 2 wheels and a chassis in order to weigh the wheels down. It didn't work at all, as you'd expect. Thinking that Eve.02 would be too complicated to perfect during the short runtime of this project, I scrapped this one as well, going to join her sister Eve.01 in the junkyard, starting fresh once again. Eve.03 I quickly dubbed Carrier after I finished her chassis. I knew after my previous failed trials I needed to make the body as strong as possible. Weight in SODAPLAY is determined by how many strings are above the object that is pressing up on them, and how many things there are pressing up to distribute the weight. Individual strings don't have weight, and I needed to keep Eve on the ground anyway, so what was the point in making a flimsy chassis? After the chassis was completed, I quickly set to work making the legs. I decided on a 6-legged model consisting of 3 key leg systems. Knowing that I could manipulate the furthest most right and left legs to become arms for reaching and grabbing at the walls in order to quickly change Eve's direction, I allowed them to flap around before putting in their muscular system. Once Eve.03 started rolling, however, I realized that she wasn't very efficient in her motions. Sure, she was getting from one side to the other and back again, but it was taking ages. I decided to change around the leg stylings by adding something else I'd been working on in my spare time. A triangle. But not just any triangle. A triangle with 2 muscles that is split down the middle by another spring. This model tragically failed, however, as the force of the above springs was too much for the new legs and their flimsy connection, and they collapsed under the pressure. So I reverted back to using Eve.03's original movement system from the chassis model, until I had an epiphany. I noticed this little box in the top right corner that gave a reading of how big or small an individual spring was. The value contained inside this box was editable. What if I made a rectangle and set 2 of the sides to 0 while giving the middle sides an identical value such as 150, and then put muscles in the long legs? Boom, I had a linear engine. Not just any engine, however, a chassis in and of itself that I could use to make Eve move. Instead of using muscles in the individual legs to move the entire contraption, I could use major muscles in the chassis to move her and minor muscles in the legs in order to alternate the order of the steps. I would kill 2 birds with 1 stone, solving the mobility problem and the direction changing problem all at the same time. This model was called Eve.04, shimmy, because it shimmies. It's not a completely graceful motion, but every time I tried to make it more balanced, it just made the motion worse, so I decided that the original model was the best. While Eve is a walking robot, Jumbo is the fighting robot. I took the original chassis off Eve 3 and attached new legs and a new contraption to it to create Jumbo. Jumbo is for the class battle competition, and while it's not that spectacular in and of itself, I know that it will be far better in that competition than Shimmy ever would, so I made it. Jumbo has 2 conical ends as opposed to the original flat ends that Eve.03 had, and I removed the middle leg entirely in order to create a different kind of fighting style that I doubt any of the other robots will have: crushing. Instead of having the robot jab or strike directly at its opponents, whenever the right front leg fires, Jumbo crashes down in a hammering motion, attacking the top of the other robot instead of the predictable front. I'm not exactly sure what kind of algorithm will be used in the class battle competition, but I know that Jumbo will certainly fare better than Eve ever would in it. And those are my robots. You've met Eve, you've met Jumbo, now let's see them race and fight. Thank you for watching.